Hello and welcome to ACS Golf and this week's review where I'm looking at this. The Cobra Radspeed Big Tour fairway wood released in 2021. And I've wanted to get my hands on one of these for quite a while. Now the reason for this is because obviously this year, mini drivers are the big thing. A lot of pros are playing them, a lot of amateur golfers are playing them because they're so consistent off the tee, and if you are a better player, generally you can still hit them off the deck. I personally have a mini driver myself. I have the Secret Weapon actually from PHG. Had it in the bag pretty much all year and actually haven't done the review for it, so that will happen before the year is ended. So do remember to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss out on that. Now for me, it is a tee replacement of the driver on tighter fairways, and I can still hit it off the deck. Don't get me wrong, it tends to come in quite low, but in summer it's perfect because it'll just keep on running. However, we're coming into winter now, so do I still want that mini driver in the bag? And recently I haven't been having it in the bag. I've actually had an oversized 3-wood, the Titleist TSR Plus 2 Plus. That is in the bag. I've done a review for that, so check that out on the channel as well. Now the reason I love that so much is because it's a little bit bigger than a normal 3-wood, so I'm still getting a lot of sort of bang from it off the tee if I need to, but also it means I'm getting a lot of distance off the fairway as well, and it's easier for me to launch. Love the thing, and that's why I wanted to pick this up and review for you guys, because this is another option like basically the Titleist TSR2 Plus. It is an oversized 3-wood, so the idea is it's going to give you a little bit more distance off the tee, but it's still manageable off the fairway, unlike some of the mini drivers, especially for your sort of amateur golfers. So that's the reason I wanted to pick it up, and that's why I've been looking for quite a while to get one, because they are quite rare. So without further ado, what we're going to do is we're going to have a closer look at this club, come back here, go for all the technologies in it, get down to the range, throw some very, very impressive figures at you, even though I do have a regular shaft on this, which is not for me anymore. My swing speed is increased drastically this year, and so I did struggle with it. However, when I did hit it, absolute fire. So we'll discuss the results there, and then we'll come back here for the ACS Golf Scale and my overall thoughts about this club, and if you're thinking of looking at a mini driver, maybe instead you should be looking at a club like this to potentially save yourself a bit of money, especially on the second-hand market where this would be found now, because obviously it is a couple of years old. All right, without further ado, let's have a closer look at this club. So there you go, and it's a good looking club. I was a big fan of the CNC milled face that Cobra used to do. A little bit of a shame. I just realised I need to clean this off a little bit. Never mind, I'll do that in a second. A little bit of shame that they obviously removed it, but obviously they say they don't need it anymore because technology has moved forward, and therefore, they don't need this to help with forgiveness, etc., which is a whole spiel about it originally, even though I think it made them feel gorgeous. Saying that, Aerojet wasn't a huge fan of the feel of that, but definitely the dark speed and the DS adapter felt lovely again. So fair play to Cobra. They have managed to keep the feel going with them. And generally, it is a good looking club, as you'd expect from Cobra. Smart looking. You can see as well that it is an oversized 3-wood. Now going into the technology for this, and obviously I'm going to read off the spiel from their website for you guys. So the Cobra Radspeed Big Tour fairway wood takes its name from a popular engineering concept called radius of gyration, which is the distance from the center of gravity to the position of the technology. The Cobra R&D team found that by increasing both the radius of gyration and the distance between the front and back club head weights, they could create a blend of speed, forgiveness and spin control that had not been achieved before. Cobra's new technology had been named radial weighting and has the potential to take your golf to a new level. So got this new radial weighting here, the idea to help the ball get launched in the air, obviously increase distance, also keep a high MOI, but also make it low spin, because that was a major problem that a lot of manufacturers used to have, was, having high MOI generally increased the spin of the clubs, which meant that your faster swing players who, could still be a high handicap player, would be punished massively. They either go for something that's more forgiving, sorry, there you go, and it will just balloon up in the air, or they go for something less forgiving and get punished on their missed hits. So, you know, this is the whole reason for this club, and definitely you could see a trend over the years where high MOI is there, but they've kept the spin down. I mean, if you're thinking about drivers, the Ping G430 10K match, you know, which I've done a review on, so check the channel out for that, like 3 years ago when it came out, you know, that was 10K MOI, but low spin monster. So that's what Cobra have been trying to do with this, you know, high forgiveness, but still low spin. So those faster swing speed players can get maximum distance without having to sacrifice on forgiveness. The Cobra Radspeed Big Tour would benefits from CNC milled facing, as I mentioned, which allows the face to be constructed to a far more exacting standard and prevents ball speed loss on shots that are struck off center. That was the whole point of the CNC facing, and then they brought in this power core, which they said they didn't need this for anymore. The new familiar rails are once again present, so there you go, still present on this model, on the solid 3 wood, but have now been hollowed, saving 10 grams of weight to be redistributed more effectively throughout the club head. The rails have been proven to improve turf interaction and have a stabilizing effect on the club head as it contacts the ground. So there you go, still got the railings there, as you can see, with the idea there to help it glide through the turf and not get stuck, which shows this again. Yes, this is a bigger club. Yes, this is to be used off a tee. However, this can still very much be used off a fairway, and that is the point of it as well. Moving on, so the Radspeed family of fairway woods, so this is just a general talk about all of them, has a 23 grams of radial weighting to be deployed differently depending on the characteristics that they're trying to achieve. So all 23 of this radial weighting in there, but obviously it's been moved around specific per the model. The Radspeed Big Tour wood is the most forward weighted in the range, with all the 23 grams placed forwards and close to the face. You can see weight there as well. So all right at the front of that face to lower the CG for the club forward and produce a boring flight that better players require, you know, and also give that low spin, you know, more weight at the front, decreases spin, and also decreases that ball flight. And that's the whole point. So if you're a golfer that likes your high launching penetrating ball flight from your 3 wood, then the Cobra Radspeed Tour fairway would be an excellent choice. So they're basically saying, if you want a different type, there are other options out there for you. But the whole point of this is a new radial weighting technology. It's long forgiving, CNC milled. Obviously you've got carbon fiber on the top as well, so weight's been moved around, and you've got adjustability. You could only get this in a 3 wood, by the way, so 14.5 degrees. You can loft it up by 1.5 degrees to make it 16, in case you wanted an extra bit of launch, or even loft it down less to go to that 13 degree to really have that boring flight. So there you go. All right, guys, now without further ado, let's get down to the range. Let's throw some figures at you. I'm down at the range with the Cobra. Now, one thing I will say is, didn't exactly have the shaft that I wanted in this. It was a bit of a regular, you know, quite whippy, but, you know, when I did hit it, oh my God, it did go fast. So on average, I had a carry of 209 yards, total distance of 244 yards, ball speed 146 miles per hour, launch angle 12 and height 53 feet. You can tell, you know, it is a low spinning club because launch wasn't that bad, 12. But then it's just, you know, it's coming out low, and it's, well, coming out quite nicely, to be fair, 12, but it's just, you know, you can tell that low spin with that peak height being down at 53, so getting lots and lots of roll. Longest on the day was 218 yards, carry 260 yards total distance, ball speed 151 miles per hour, really happy with that. And then the shortest, mainly because, you know, with this whippy shaft, wasn't necessarily hitting the middle of the face all the time, was 185 yards carry and 228 yards total distance, ball speed only 139 miles per hour. But that was a really poor hit because I did lose the head, unfortunately, when swinging with this club. But when I was swinging smoothly with it and hitting it correctly, it was absolute fire. Feeling wise, felt lovely out the middle of the face, a little bit firmer outside of it, I will say, but nothing to really complain about. It's just, oh, there you go, checking the flex of the shaft, but nothing really to complain about there. So here's the numbers, by the way, for you guys to have a quick look at. Sound-wise as well, I'll say lovely. Looking down on it, really nice as well. Perfect shape, easy to hit off the deck and easy to hit off the tee as well. So really, it is an all-rounder of a 3-wood. You know, really happy with the performance and the numbers, to be fair. Just, I think, for me, I'd need a little bit more of a flexible shaft if I was considering playing a club like this. So there you go, and some very, very impressive figures with this club. I mean, on average, a carry of 209 yards, you know, not the biggest carry I've ever had, but of course, I'm not expecting it to be with this club, even with the regular shaft, to be fair. You know, it is supposed to be a low flight, large rollout, as I'd expect. It's low spinning, 244 yards on average total distance, ball speed 146 miles per hour, launch angle 12, and height 53 feet. You can just tell that spin a little bit low there. That keeps that ball really just a boring flight. Really liked it. Longest on the day was a whopping 218 yards carry, 260 yards total distance, and a 151 miles per hour ball speed, 7-degree launch. It just came out a little bit low, as you'd expect from this club. Shortest on the day, not a great hit, to be fair. Definitely struggled at first with that regular shaft, got used to it in the end. You know, 185 yards total carry, 228 yards total distance, and only a ball speed 139 miles per hour. You can see, sort of tell there that, you know, you really do have to have a really good strike on this to get the most out of it. And yes, you know, that was a really poor hit, but we'll discuss the forgiveness in the end, because let's be honest, it doesn't matter how, well, it doesn't matter what club it is, I'm still not going to get great results from that. So there you go. But yeah, longest I mentioned 260, but a lot of them were around that 240 mark. So that was very much the consistent one. Just every now and again, I got over 250, and then obviously that 261 where I absolutely nailed it right at the end, which is always the way. Always makes me want to keep on going. So let's get into the ACS Golf Scale. So remember, we've got 5 categories. We've got distance, feel, looks, price, and forgiveness. 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. Now, distance for this, 260 total distance. With this, you know, technically I feel like if I lofted it up, would have got better launch. If I put a stiffer shaft in it, would have had a little bit more control in it. So I feel like it could have even got more distance. So you would think I'd give it a 5 out of 5. Compared to all other fairway woods, it would be a 5 out of 5, 100%. This is definitely one of the longest fairway wood, if not the longest fairway wood I've ever tested on this channel. However, I do stick personally mini drivers in my fairway wood category, so I don't think this is going to be longer than a mini drive. Some of the older mini drivers perhaps, but not your newer mini drivers. So that's why I'm giving it 4.5 out of 5. Do not get me wrong, if I'm comparing this solely to fairway woods, it would be a 5 out of 5. So there you go. On to feel. As I mentioned, I used to love the feel of Cobras. I still do, to be fair. Definitely up there for me with best feeling drivers and fairway woods, etc. I've given it a 4. Out the middle of the face, it feels absolutely lovely. Exactly what I'd expect. Soft but yet powerful. But not out the middle, it feels a lot harsher, a lot harder. And that's because all that weight is at the front. So I've given it a 4 out of 5 because when you nail it out the middle, it's great. But when you miss that center, you do feel it, which I quite like, because I think, you know it's going to be a bad shot straight off the bat. There's nothing worse for me when you nail a club and you look up and you go, nah, I've absolutely smoked that, and it's gone 30 yards lower than, 30 yards shorter than normal, and you realise you've actually smacked it right off the corner. So I like that feature personally for me. But yeah, 4 out of 5 because it does feel lovely out the middle, but missing that middle, it does feel quite harsh. And I will say that hard feeling, I couldn't really tell where on the face I was hitting it, so I knew it was a miss, but I didn't exactly know where the miss was. So not great there personally. You know, I'd like to know if it's off the tie, I'd like to know if it's off the heel, etc. So a little bit of, because, you know, and then I can adjust the swing. Even though my swing is dodgy as hell, I can adjust it to sort of counter that. But yeah, didn't really get that feeling from it. So yeah, 4 out of 5 because when it is smoked, it does feel gorgeous. Looks, 4 out of 5. You know, really smart looking club. It does look great. Just personally for me, not a huge fan of that colouring. Just no. And I don't think it's aged well because of that personally. It's definitely starting to look a little bit older compared to other competitors, where from 2021 they probably could put it straight in your bag and then maybe people think they're brand new. So yeah, not too sure about that, but there you go. I'll just radial weights there. There you go. Anyway, going on to forgiveness. So I did a lot of reading about this club, as I always do for these reviews. I never just, obviously I go and test the clubs very intensely, but then I also like to read up on them as well and just get a real idea about them. Now, a lot of the places around have said the forgiveness of this is good. And I think it is good. I don't think so. I've given it a 3. I originally gave it a 3.5, and maybe I'm being a little bit harsh, and maybe it should be a 3.5. But that first shot, 228, that was a big drop down from the average of 240. Also, because of that low spin, if you take miss hits, it can potentially drop out the sky. So do be aware of that. I think overall the forgiveness is really good, and I think the better player looking for this would definitely really enjoy it. However, I think if you're an amateur golfer and you're just looking for something a little bit bigger than your normal 3-wood, you're not necessarily the fastest swing player, I wouldn't go for this. For me, this is very much a better players club, who's relatively going to be hitting out the middle, but doesn't want to go down the mini driver route. If you're that sort of player, then maybe look at the Titleist TSR 2 Plus. Again, it's a little bit different, not necessarily low spin, and look at maybe the ping stretches as well, which are like ultimate forgiveness, and a little bit bigger profile. You can get them in a second-hand market as well. But yeah, 3 out of 5, not the end of the world. Maybe a little bit harsh. Maybe I say 3.5, but I just feel be aware of that low spin. It can affect it. It is going to be a boring flight. So if you can't get a ball up in the air, you will struggle with this. And also, those miss hits, as I mentioned, that was a big drop off there. It was a bad hit, but still, it relatively was a big hit. To get my voice back there, it was relatively, a big drop off in my mind, especially carry, 209 to 185, and there's a few there as well. Ball speed was a big drop off, 139. I am sort of leaning more to 3.5 looking at those figures, to be fair, but I'm going to stick with a 3. I'm going to stick with a 3. Potentially 3.5, but just be aware of this. If you do struggle with your fairway woods, I wouldn't necessarily suggest this one. As I mentioned, ping stretch if you want an oversized one, or they're one range, they tend to be a little bit bigger. There's definitely a lot of bigger ones out there that you can pick up if you're looking for a bigger fairway wood. Doesn't necessarily mean it's bigger, easier to hit, to be fair, because obviously you've got a big profile behind it off a fairway. The line's not exactly perfect. If you're an amateur golfer, you will, such as myself, because I'm an amateur golfer, currently playing off 8, you will struggle off it, and I find that as well. I've really worked on my fairway woods this year, definitely since I got that TSR2, and I've definitely improved, but over the years, it was definitely one thing I struggled with because of that bigger profile behind the head and necessarily the lie. But yeah, 3 out of 5, potentially 3.5 if I was feeling a little bit generous, or maybe less harsh. Say less harsh. Now on to price. So second-hand markets, these are quite rare, but you can pick them up for like golf clubs for cash quite easily, which is a second-hand store in the UK. You're looking starting there for about £105, going up to around £120, which is around what, $140, up to about $160. I don't think that's a bad price. If you're looking for sort of a tour version, low spin fairway wood that's going to give you maximum distance, or what, amazing distance really, you're relatively going to be hitting the middle of the club face every single tie, I think is a really, really good option, to be fair. eBay ranges, I've seen them go for sort of £86 all the way up to £120 again. So, $116 all the way up to that 160 mark. So yeah, there is a bit of a range there, but they are quite rare, so they they do tend to go a bit like that. But overall, I think with that price, a 4 out of 5. Forgiveness, 3 out of 5 isn't bad at all, believe me, especially for your better player. Distance wise, this thing is crazy. I've definitely felt like I could get some control with it if I had a stiffer shaft built more for me. And you have that adjustability with it as well, and you have a pretty good feel straight out the middle and some good looks. So yeah, 4 out of 5 when it comes down to the price. All right, guys, so there you go. There's my review of the Cobra Radspeed Big Tour fairway wood. Bigger than a normal one. I think the CC's on this 173cc. Normal was around the 160 mark off the top of my head. I should have been in the description. I don't know why it wasn't. But so yeah, bigger than your normal 3 wood. Definitely a great option off the tee and off the deck if you're a better player and you want that lower spinning, lower penetrating flight. If you're an amateur golfer or a player who generally, because let's be honest, you can be a very good golfer, you could be in single figures handicap such as myself and maybe not really use a 3-wood because you just can't get on with it. We're all, we all have good aspects of our game. It used to be wedges for me, for 120 yards in every single time on the tee. Now I'm sort of getting to par 5s and 2, and 120 yards, I'm useless. So, you know, you always range. But, you know, if you're a decent enough player who can, you know, really play with a 3-wood, I think it's a great option, especially if you're looking for a little bit more distance and you don't want to go down the mini driver route. All right, guys, now, as I mentioned, there's my view. Hope you enjoyed it. Do give this video a like if you did. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you're brand new and you enjoyed this video, because we've got brand new, well, reviews like this out on every Sunday of like second-hand clubs, or like previous models. Could be like even the last year model, to be fair. Brand new clubs every now and again on a Friday, versus videos, you know, golden oldies, lots of stuff that comes out, so you don't want to miss that. So do remember to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon if you're new to the channel, and comment down below, you know, do you play an oversized 3-wood? If you do, what it is and why do you play it? Love to know. All right, guys, catch you soon for the next video. See you then. Bye bye.